Hi, I'm Jim,
And I'm Hisham, and this is.
a Quantumly Leaping podcast.
Yes, it is. And today we have decided to talk about kind of a light topic, but it's also very relevant and very important to talk about it. So, Jim, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what are we going to talk about before we dive into the topics?
It's great again to do continue this podcast. So today we're going to talk about what has occurred in the last 12 weeks since we entered COVID. We did an early episode, um, one of our early beginning episodes regarding when we're in quarantine. A lot has happened since then, and so we felt today was a good transitional episode to do. And so now here in we're in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We are going through phase two now to open the general economy here gradually, which is great. I'm great because I'm starting to get some work. So yay, yay! So it's exciting. So we felt that we discussed this during the week, and we felt that there was a number of topics we can address now, and then we'll have a sort of a post-COVID conversation later on. So with that, I'll throw it back to you, Hashan.
Yeah, and I just want before we dive into the topics, I just want to tell our audience that this is not because we promised him about a bunch of other episodes about post COVID-19 or what's going to happen, what we expect to happen post COVID-19. This is not one of those. It's as you said, it's a transitional episode between this and that. It's like an awareness episode. We're going to tell people what to expect,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm telling them from our opinion because we've seen that happening in other countries. How they are started, other countries have started this pandemic before us, and now they are reopening a little bit. And I know that in my home country in Jordan, they're opening next week, and they started gradually. Your country of origin in Greece as well. So we're gonna just tell the people about uh, what we hear from there, because I still have
Mm-hmm.
family there, you have family there, and we hear the news.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good to tell people what to expect. I know that every country is different, even every province is different, but what I see around the world from the people that I hear around, uh, it's very similar. The gradual opening is very similar. I think it's good to tell our audience what to expect during this reopening and what to do, what's our responsibility into that. So with that in mind, let's dive into our first topic, which is uh, let's talk first about the thing that a lot of people were talking about, but I think many have different interpretations of which is the flattening the curve, what we call, and we hear that all the time. So, what does flatten the curve means, and how does that affect the reopening decision? And I want to just say that a lot of people thought that flattening the curve is like we flatten the curve, everything is fine, we go back, but that's not what flattening the curve means. And from as someone who worked in AI and modeling, I would tell people that flattening the curve means that we stop the rapid spreading of the virus. We're not stopping the virus yet, but we're stopping it on a level that like our healthcare system is still can still take. We're not gonna crush it down, just like what happened in places like Italy or Spain, or now happening in Brazil and other parts. So we started already in Canada and most of parts of Canada to flatten the curve, which means we're the new cases are under control and they're not going to crush our healthcare system. And with the reopening, we shall expect new cases to happen. It doesn't mean that when we reopen, nothing is going to happen because we stopped it. No, we will expect it, but it's going to be also within our the control and the capacity of our healthcare system. And at one point, it's not going to go down, but that means we're not going to crush. And of course, the opening is going to go gradually. We're going to talk about that, but I just wanted to put things in perspective because a lot of people don't and I don't blame them. It's not that I that we're judging them, because a lot of people, it's very mathematical, and it's very complicated how these models work, and how we calculate the capacity of our healthcare system versus what we need, because our healthcare system is not just there for the coronavirus. We have a lot of other people as well, and those cases coming in, they're needing ventilators, they're needing room, will also affect other people with cancer, with surgeries for heart. This is what a lot of people don't have in mind. And I know, because we take things, as humans, we take things for granted. So we know that we have this system. Now I can go to the hospital anytime and something like that, but we don't know that when something like this happens, it affects everybody. So this is what it means to flatten the curve. And I know, Jim, you also have your own view and perspective about that from your own experiences. Specifically, you live in Toronto, and you saw a lot of things that are not really nice that happening. So I know that you have a perspective, if you can share.
Yeah, we last 3 weeks or so, we had some instances where people got together. A lot of people got together near a park. I live about 20 minutes away, and then we had some protests happening last week, and we're having more protests happening as we speak this weekend. And this is a huge concern for everybody because, like I said, we're not out of the woods yet. And I appreciate Shem sharing the modeling. I mean, I've done some modeling in the sports area for myself, and I realized how important I was going to be now to understand it now. But one of the most important things here in Toronto, that the curve has not come down. It's stopped, and it's kind of going across. So we still have a lot of cases, but they're kind of isolating where they are. We're not going to get into specifics, but yeah, there's people out there protesting. Some wearing masks, some are not. So that's a huge concern over the next 2-3 weeks to see, are we going to see a spike? Because if we see a spike, then it's indicating that maybe it's because of these events. So I don't know, people. The weather's good here in Toronto. It's 25, 30 degrees, so people are out cycling. They've closed the streets down in certain areas for the week, for this weekend and last weekend. So we're not in the woods yet, but the weather's good and people are outside. So we'll discuss that a little more here as to what specifically is happening here in Toronto and GTA. So I'll throw it back to you, Hisham.
Yeah, and I just want to say also that we're not against people going out. We're not against people going to protest.
Hmm.
This is our rights and freedoms, and
Yes.
going there and saying that we should stop them from doing that is going to be more even dangerous than
Yeah.
saying we're trying to keep that. We want them to do to practice their rights and freedoms, like our
Hmm.
constitution says and our laws say. But we want just to say that when you practice those rights, remember that other people have rights, the right to live. You are don't put them in danger. So if you are going on a park or something, I mean, like, we know that going outside, specifically now that there's no wind and nothing, going outside may be even safer than being inside, because the viruses
Yeah.
cannot live. And specifically now it's getting hotter, and the weather is getting nice. But that's not going to be the case if you're too close to each other. you
Yeah.
know if you keep your distancing, if you cannot keep your distance, they're telling, take extra measurements. We're going to talk about that while we talk about the opening. But again, we're not against any of that. It's your right, and again, we don't want to go into the slippery slope of taking
Hmm.
people's
Yeah.
rights.
Yeah.
And by the way, also, we're going to talk about that in a different topic. But uh,
Yeah.
compared to other parts of the world, we didn't go into much of a draconian measures. I mean, like, I know people in Canada here are not used to that, and a lot of people saw that as draconian measures. But compared to the other parts of the world, we have not gone even close to draconian
No.
measurements.
No.
you know, And
No,
right now, but I understand.
I have examples. I have examples.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in an upcoming topic. We're gonna say examples, but what I'm trying to tell people is that if you look around the world, we're still very lucky that we didn't have to go to other draconian measures. And also, on behalf of most people in Canada, I would thank them because most of them were compliance. I mean, what we saw in the Trinity Billboard or some other places, there was even cases in Quebec. I've heard that some in Saskatchewan and British Columbia, in Vancouver. There were a lot here and there, but the thing about media sometimes is like we don't talk about the people who are complacent or compliance because it's most of us. But when some small group of people do that, it becomes in the media because this is annoying, right? And this is going to affect the other people. But that doesn't mean that most people are doing that. It's not. Actually, I saw some study that mostly, I don't know, I cannot say that it's true or not, but I saw it on some website and say like some early studies says like more 90% or more of Canadians were complacent with that. So again, thank you everyone, all of those people, all those Canadians who stayed home when they can, who followed, who quarantined themselves, who have came from what do you call it, from traveling or anything, and they kept isolated for even some of them for even more than 14 days to keep safe. Most people has done that, and of course, this is we live in a great country after all. People here are also very well, let me say, well educated, and I'm not saying educated as a part of like, the official education. I'm talking about like culturals also. They
Mhm.
know. Most people were looking at the daily briefing by the prime minister and the pandemic. This what do you call it? The emergency pandemic group, whatever. I forgot their name, but which is Dr. Tam and her team. And a lot of people, I've seen them even on social media talking about that, which means that there was awareness. People were not ignoring. And those cases that we talked about are very rare. But uh, we have to talk about that so that we can avoid it because we expect another breakout, a break. You know that, and people say there will
Yeah.
be a second wave and all of this thing, which we're gonna talk about as well shortly. So again, last of this topic. Thanks for the Canadians who for most Canadians who were complacent and helped flattening this curve, and hope we will back to normalcy very soon, which will take us to the next topic, how which is how life will look like during the reopening, and also the responsibility of individuals and businesses in keeping things under control, keeping this curve flattened, and living in the new norm for that matter. So, Jim, I know because you live in a very crowded city, and
Mhm.
you told me that you started seeing a lot of businesses opening and the measurements out there. I would love you to share what you have seen, and then we'll go on what other parts of the world in another topic, what they've done and how can we learn from that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I live in basically the downtown core here, and it's been interesting. So basically, in short, when you're going for groceries, they are asking uh, to wear masks. I've gone a little overboard, and I've worn gloves, um, just because I did. Um, so anywhere else we've gone, I went to buy gardening supplies recently, tomatoes and so forth. Just masks were asked. Um, some places had signs that were very vehemently that you have to wear a mask. At the garden center, you had to wear a mask. You were not let in. People were actually a little upset, actually. There was a gentleman in front of me who was very upset. He didn't have a mask. He says, "Sir, please come out with a mask." And he ended up leaving. Some places, they asked for a mask, and they gave us see-through gloves to wear. So there's a place called the Bulk Barn here in Toronto. They had a little table, a thing of a hand sanitizer. You wore these plastic maps, and then they gloves, and they walk you through so to pick your order. We go by cheap.
Yeah, just so people know, Bulk Barn is a place where you can go and you can pick. It sells in bulks, and you can choose your things by yourself. And because of this pandemic, so they stopped doing that because they were afraid that people might infect those things. So just for people to know who doesn't live in Canada or who don't know about that. So just for you to continue on that.
Thank you. Yeah, so they give you a personal shopper at Bulk Barn to walk through. We have a place where you go buy. We have a place where we buy cheese, and they had gloves. Gave us gloves to wear, hand sanitizer. But for the most part, just mask was what they were looking for. The biggest thing that I think people are maybe a little not upset but a little irritated are just the lines. So Walmart, big box lines are ridiculously long. So that's one place. Meat places, believe it or not, to go buy meat here in my area, long lineups around the block.
Costco.
So Costco. Oh my goodness, Costco. Week two of COVID. Ridiculous. I got video of the snake they had. Now not as bad. We went last week. It wasn't as bad. And the main thing that I like to just show is that a lot of signage has been up about social distancing. A lot of signage, masks and all that. So for the most part, that's what's happening here that I've seen. The challenge will be now under phase 2 here happening is how will the bigger places handle this, restaurants and all that. So that is where we are right now, is restaurants and things of that nature. How will they do it? They haven't released information yet. They've allowed food trucks to maneuver, ice cream trucks to maneuver around the city. We have a lot, like 180 food trucks here in Toronto. They've passed permits to allow them to be used here the last 3-4 years. So that's sort of a general consensus of things happening that I've seen that I want to share. So I'll throw it back to you, Hisham.
Yeah, and as you said, as we said in the previous topic, that we have families in different countries. Like I have family in Jordan and in different other countries around the world, and some of them have started reopening. So as you said, in Jordan, all places there, all supermarkets, all places, they don't allow you without a mask. So they would throw you out, or they would not allow you to enter. And they have, like us, they have those signs, like on the ground signs and the arrows. You have to go through this way. You have to keep this distance. If someone is in front of you on this line, you just keep that 6 feet or 2 meters. Apart from this, they've installed plexiglasses. My sister works in Amazon in Jordan, and they, for the past few weeks, they have not come back. I mean, like they will come back fully on this week or the upcoming week. But my sister was going every day. They're printing hundreds and hundreds of signs, what to put and what to do here and doing there, and where to stand up and how to keep this distance. Hard, like for the past 2-3 weeks, that's what's only she was doing, printing those signs, spreading them here and there, the instructions, the information. There were also some people who were coming to draw those instructions and lines on the ground, and she was helping them on putting those. So there were also, as we've done, installed plexiglasses everywhere between the workers and this one. So this is going to happen, and this is going to happen for a while. It's not going to be like only 2-3 weeks. And I was just going to tell people that Jordan has reopened a little bit a while ago, and then there was a breakout. Then they went back to measurements again. So that could happen here as well. So it's like when we reopen, we should expect that measurements should go up and down within the extreme on how extreme they are according to how the break comes through, or how cases we would see new. But
Hmm.
it's not going to
Hmm.
be maybe like before or like the beginning, but it's going to
Yeah.
go up and down. We should expect it to go up and down.
Yeah.
Restaurants that, like you said, in Jordan, they started opening as well. I mean, like,
Yeah.
but my family said it's like so ridiculous. Like that, there's a table
Yeah.
here and there's another table on 2 meters, and it looks like. But the good thing is like we're opening in summer, so I believe patios are
Yeah.
going to be popular because being
Yeah.
outside is safer, as we know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would
So
believe that.
in
Yeah.
Toronto, just sorry to interject. In Toronto, they're looking at allowing businesses to open their patios.
Yes.
Here we have a major street called King Street. It's just uh, streetcars, no cars, and in other places. So I have a big event I do in the summertime called the Patio Power Summer Series. It's an indirect plug, but yeah. So patios may be the solution to some
Yeah.
businesses
Yeah.
here because the restaurant business is a big, tourism. That's a whole other discussion about tourism. The city's pumping money to the tourism here, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, restaurants. Back to you, Isham. Sorry, I just wanted to
Yeah,
add something.
and by the way, the BC is has started because they started to open, and I've seen like this report on CBC that restaurant owners are asking to expand their patios a little bit so that they
Yeah,
could get more customers because they cannot get the same number and they have to keep on covering their costs and all. So there
yeah,
are also the BC government and the cities in the BC in British Columbia are studying giving them a little bit more space at least for this time so that they could have more clients in patios because it's safer to be outside than to
yeah,
be inside. So this is
yeah,
gonna and let's not forget that the hygiene should be all the time. We should expect all those using all of those hand sanitizers and all everywhere. It's gonna be for
yeah.
a long. I don't think we'll talk about it, but I don't think this will stop even after COVID-19.
Hmm.
But I think
Hmm.
I think this is what we should expect, and I would stress on the point that even after reopening, if we got more cases than we expected, we might go to a little bit more extreme measurements. Expect specifically if we got another wave, which is expected to happen in the fall, we might go back to a little bit of more extreme measurements for that matter. So this is what's happening around the world, but countries are, as I said, are controlling them. From what we see outside, it's going well, and we hope once our economy started to open, we will have a similar or even a better experience, which uh, will lead us to the third topic today. And it's what shall we do after the pandemic? And I'm not talking about reopening now. Let's say that we reopened, we controlled, and then the curve went back to zero. We don't have any cases. What should we do after that? And should we start reopening like the borders? Because
Mm.
within the reopening doesn't include reopening the full borders. We know that, but shall we reopen the borders specifically with our neighboring country, the United States? We have the largest border in the
Yeah,
world with them, and it's not just we have the largest. We're so dependent on a lot of thing, and they are also
yeah,
dependent on a lot of things from us. It's a two-way relationship, and it's very
yeah,
important to open it. But shall we do that after when it comes? And specifically, we have also to be cognizant that once this once we finish maybe this summer or by the end of this summer, we should expect another wave in the fall, and we might have controlled it, but we don't know what is going to happen, which is another topic in this. But we should expect that a lot of the measurements that we took during the pandemic are going to continue even after the pandemic. Let me just give an example from my own life, and I'm gonna throw up because I know you also have a lot to say in this. I remember I was working in Qatar at the time, 2003, SARS. Everybody remembers that. It was not even that spread or that even dangerous. But I still remember when that happened, there were some cases in Saudi Arabia, which is a very neighboring country, and then it moved to Qatar. We have like 4 cases at when they discussed it. When they discovered it. It was a widespread from the Qatari government, I believe, and they were sending us text messages all the time about measurements, hygiene, washing your hands, and all of these things. And every mall, every building, private or public sector businesses, they have those sanitizers until now. I'm talking since 2003 now, and they were always telling us keep sanitizers with you wherever you go because you don't know what you're touching. And I was driving at the time, I had a car, and you touch the steering, you touch everything, and sometimes people come into your car, you don't know what is happening. So since 2003, I'm having this hand sanitizer. I know that when we first met, you noticed that I was holding it everywhere, and when we eat or something, a lot of people were looking at me. They were accepting it, but I could see that they're looking at me and smiling. It's like what this guy is
Including
doing.
me, including
I
me.
I wouldn't
I
say
tell,
I wouldn't say
I,
names.
I, okay, I have to tell you this, ladies and gentlemen. So I've only known Hisham 4 years. It seems like a lifetime. So Hisham, he's like a MacGyver. Hisham, has his bag, has his laptop, camera, and all that. And on a previous show, I always he gave me this straw. He got me this straw now, and then he had this straw, and he had this little thing. It was like a little child. He's showing me this little straw, this thing. So here's where things got turned. So over the past couple of years, Hisham and I have gone to done some corporate events, provide media, and we go to these events and they give away, hats and gloves and shirts. I'm wearing one now, but hand sanitizers. Oh my goodness! I think correctly. I think it sounds like 4 of them. I took 2 or something. They're all gone. I got one. I got one here. So now this COVID's happening. I have a whole new appreciation for hand sanitizers. My story about SARS is I remember SARS very ideally because I was out and about. I was networking. I was with my first mentor at the time, and there were hand sanitizers everywhere. I mean, everywhere, hotels, networking events. I mean, it was even for like everywhere. That was definitely I remember I have a friends who worked in the hospitals at that time, and they were telling me, it's more happening in the hospitals than anything else. So when COVID hit and it wasn't like SARS, and it just went like wildfire. The thing is people became a little restless because the weather started getting warm. Like this happened in March, but now we're in June, and I do a lot of cycling here. I go walking, and there's people everywhere, and a lot of people are outside who are not wearing masks. For me, it's still a concern. I still have a head mask I wear that I can bring down, but I think that I'm concerned about second wave. I'm very concerned. I know that we've had a lot of hot temperatures here in June, and who knows how they say it's going to be hotter than normal this summer in the summer. But I think that it's going to be interesting. June and July. The only thing I'm going to add, a small thing, is that the major sports organizations are going to be starting up in July. Now, why I mention this is a lot of them do travel by bus. Some travel by airplane, but some by bus across in the United States and into Canada. So I think that this border, when it opens up even a little bit, July is a very, very July and August are going to be very interesting months to see. Will it dip? Will it flatten? Will it go down? Will it kind of disappear? Because at the end of the day, from what I've heard and research I've done, is this COVID does not disappear. It sticks around. That's what I've heard from the facts that I've I've read a magazine called the New Scientist magazine and some other things, and spoken to a few other individuals. So it doesn't disappear, ladies and gentlemen. It's still around. So there's been a lot. Basically, what I'm trying to get at in context is a lot of movement is going on of people. So I just want to add what Hisham is saying, that there's a lot of dynamics, and who knows what's going to happen. So here in Toronto, we're not going down in Toronto. We are still at 300, 350 cases a week. So we're not out of the woods yet. So back to you, Hisham.
Yeah, and as you said, SARS happened. People took measurements, but when it went away, people get back to relaxation very fast. And
Yeah,
I mean, like, but I still remember. I mean, when I talk about Qatar or other people, they still have those. Wherever you go, you have that hand sanitizer. They kept on that, and it's the thing is, it became a habit, which is a good
mm-hmm,
thing. As you know,
mm-hmm,
I have this habit since 2003 of having the sanitizers in my pocket, and I have it because I was there, and it was
yeah,
everywhere, and people were like, "Oh, that anybody has a hand sanitizer." It became like a general habit, which is a very good thing. Even if you don't
yes,
have a COVID-19 or anything, it's a good habit to keep your hands sanitized, because whether we like it or not, our hands, which are the most maybe important, one of the most important parts in our body, could turn out to be our worst enemy. We know
yeah,
that right now, and I hope that we will continue on doing that. Back to your point also about opening the borders. I think this is a very complicated because, as I said, we have the longest border in the world, and it depends on which part of the border are you talking about. Like here, we're neighboring to New York, which is maybe the worst hit in the United States. And
yeah,
is it time to open it while they still have a lot of number of cases going on? And
yeah,
they also have some new cases of a weird disease that comes with COVID-19, specifically for kids, which comes on their
yeah,
something rash comes on their
yeah. It's
skin.
bad. Yeah,
It's
it's not good.
ugly. It
It's
is
not good.
ugly, and
Yeah.
that
So
is
yeah,
that.
because with what happens with some of these, I just want to add. So what happens with some of these diseases is they mutate. So what happened is in New York specifically and some other places, it mutated in children much, I guess, worse. I guess the word to use. So there was a big problem. Hundreds of kids. It wasn't just one. It was hundreds of kids.
Yeah, and
So
some of them are
that's the
dying.
challenge with the, yeah. So it's mutated. Some of them have died, yes, and so it's mutated. So the concern is that there's different strains. That's what the strains have changed. So again, we have a big border, and I think that this is causing issues with other things because the sports teams are putting a lot of pressure on the governments to open. They're gradually now starting to practice and things like that. They'll be starting in July. So we're having for sports fans here in the world in North America, we have a lot of sports happening in July and August, September. But like I said, it's a delicate issue, and I have to make a lot of respect for the government, just in generally that they've tried to do their best to kind of not push for the this opening quickly. And I'd rather them get criticized now for doing it rather than starting it quick. But in my area here, they're starting to open, and which is a good sign. Unfortunately, some of them are closed because we had some other situations that occurred. We're not going to talk about them in this show, but we had some other situations. So some stores have boarded up, but due to another situation. So I'll throw it back to you, Shan.
Yeah, and that actually leads me to our next and last topic, actually,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
is the situation in our neighboring country, the United States.
Yes.
We know that the United States have the largest number of cases in the world, and
Mm-hmm.
although the whole number of the United States is, I think, less than 3% of the world or something. I heard like this report, but they have
Yeah.
more than 30% of COVID cases in the whole world. A country like that,
Yeah.
only 300,000 of 7 7.8 or 7.9 even billion people right now, and they
Yeah.
have 30% of
Yeah.
COVID-19 cases, and I
Yeah.
think it's the largest deaths also in the
Yeah.
world, which
Yeah. They
is
have, but
which
they're nearing 110,000. They're nearing 110,000 in the states.
yeah, it's 1100 cases of deaths, and it's like, or sorry, uh, uh, um, um, uh, I, whatever. I just got my mind's got I got mind blocked, but because it is it's mind-boggling what is happening
Yeah.
there, and when you
Yeah.
think about it, how small of compared to the world, how small of a population could have that number, and they I heard that some people saying that this is not even the right numbers. There's a lot that we might discover in the future. There's some of them that we might never discover because they happened, and people it died or even it recovered without us knowing what is going on. And they have a lot.
Yeah.
We know that they have a lot of problems with testing that leads to
Yeah.
also people. And a lot of people don't know this about the United States. Like if you lose your job, I can understand their frustration about that, why they want to reopen the country, while a lot of people are saying it's not ready because the federal emergency state was ended like last week, so no one is eligible for help from the federal government, and people there are losing their jobs. And you in the United States, you lose your job, you lose your income. Most of the time, you would lose your health care. You might lose your house. There are no laws to protect you if you lose your house or your apartment. You cannot pay the rent, or even, and there's nothing to protect you from losing your healthcare. Healthcare in the United States is actually maybe the only country in the world that doesn't have a healthcare for all system. That's what I've heard, and people don't understand that. I mean, they see the Americans go and they say we want to reopen, and say those people are idiots, but they because I think they don't understand the frustration they're in. They're not even a lot of them, they cannot even do the tests because they don't have health care, and they cannot pay for those tests. So it is really really frustrating for them for
Yeah.
them to do that, and for us to think about, okay, what went wrong. And I don't want to blame any political party or anything, because this problem is rooted. I mean, let's take it as is. The problem of healthcare is rooted long time in the United States, and no one from both parties or any place have done any real effort to fix it. Just we started hearing about global healthcare and global income like in 2016, I think,
Yeah.
with what's his name, Bernie Sanders and all. Before that,
Yeah.
we didn't hear anything. And to bring a
Yeah.
change like that is not easy after centuries and centuries. So
Yeah.
people don't understand their frustration, right? I mean, I know that you also have been to the United States many times, and you get the situation there.
Yeah, I have been, and I had like I've been to Dallas, I've been to San Antonio, I've been to Harrison, Arkansas, and for them, all I heard when I was down there was about, oh, Canadians have great health care. They knew about our health care. They may know nothing about Canada, where I was from, but they know about Canada's health care. So for them, that's a big deal, and I think that these numbers are still going to go. Regrettably, more people will not survive this pandemic, and you know uh, you know it's not a good thing. And I just for me, it was hard the first 3 weeks on a personal level. It was hard the first 3 weeks. I mean, even now, 12 weeks in, um, we still have to realize that this is not going away. We're trying to live our lives. I had some big successes this week and the last few weeks, and but I have to remember at the end of the night that there's people who are losing their lives. I had a close family member in the states who had COVID. He has since been released and is home with sort of recuperating slowly. So it became very real when you have a family member, I learned about 3 weeks ago. So that's why it was important that we wanted to do this transition episode because, who knows what it's going to look like in September. Because we'll definitely do another episode in September before we end season one here. But all I got to say is I think we've covered a lot of great topics here in this podcast. So thanks to Sham for kind of breaking it up. We did discuss this again. We do a lot of talking before we come to air, as we were discussed. So the only thing I'll say is that again, we have a unique problem because of being attached to the United States. And yes, Ontario and Quebec both are having issues. Quebec very, very difficult as well. So I can understand the hesitancy of the governments to do that, but eventually people will begin. In the States, what I also want to say, in the States, people like to travel in the States. They travel. They travel a lot in the States. We do here in Canada too, but in the States, they travel. Like it's part of what they do. They go from one side to the other. They travel. They move. So you can't keep people stationary for long. Even in Toronto, the housing was booming here. Now my neighbor, he's tearing out his house because he needs to renovate it because it's not selling. So he's sweating it out here next door, doing it. So people are going to become stationary. And I think that, we've discussed some other topics, but over the next, 2 months, we'll be talking about education. We'll be talking about health and wealth. So these are all kind of that have been affected with COVID. So with that, I'll throw it back to you, Hisham.
Yeah, and about your point about Americans traveling, they are way much bigger on travel than Canadians, and now that they cannot do any international traveling, so if the borders are open, what we expect is for them to come here, right? Because they won't be able to fly. A lot of them will come with their cars or something like that. So we would expect a lot of them to come, which is something that is because we're not ready yet. They're not ready yet. Let's be honest about that. And so we have to be really careful about that one. And I just wanted to say that I don't know what is happening there on political level or anything like that, but we know that there's something wrong that is happening there, because it doesn't make sense that a country with 300 million population have 34% of the whole world, which is 7.8 billion. There's something wrong. Don't want to go in politics, but there's something wrong. And we see other countries, even less powerful or less rich than the United States, controlling that much quickly and better. Like what you say in Jordan, in Jordan because they knew that in a small country like that, they even have even more draconian measurements like curfews. And
in Greece, they had less than 100 deaths of COVID, but they went totally draconian. And I'll share a funny. Well, it's funny. So they were giving out fines for people, and there was a small event that went up, and they gave people $1,000 fines, euro fines for being out. And the news guy was saying he was just handing out $1,000 up to $1,000. They went, and I think we didn't go that draconian here in Toronto, and I think maybe if we would have started earlier. Now hindsight being 2020, if we had started a little earlier, would this have been better for us? But in Greece, there are less than 100 deaths or 110 deaths. So in other parts, in Sweden, Germany, in New Zealand, obviously, is the showcase place where they had very few. But again, at the end of the day, is we live in a very big world. We have 7 billion people. We have different continents. We have different types of leadership. It's things. So in the States, they still have it under control, ladies and gentlemen. There's flare-ups in LA. They're still not under control yet, even in the States. So and now we have other issues happening here in the world. We're not going to talk about it here, but like I said, COVID was second for a few weeks because we had a humanitarian diversity situation here that occurred, but which was very serious. I want to bring light to that, but now it's back in the news again. Now COVID's back in the news again. It never disappeared. It just was pushed to the
Yeah.
side. So I'll throw it back to you so we can, I guess, end this episode here soon
Yeah,
here.
and I just want to say to people that maybe we couldn't, maybe we didn't go too much draconian measurements because Canada is not used to that. We never had a curfew. I mean, like,
Yeah.
just to be clear, the law allows the federal government or the province government to put curfews, but we never had to do that. And I think if we had to go that, people are gonna be like really in shock and anger. But keep
Yeah.
it looking at places like Greece or in Europe in general. Europe has gone through a lot, like World War I, World War II. They have been in curfews in war zones, and they're used to this kind of. Even in the United States, they have curfews. Even I mean, like they didn't have a curfew since World War I, but they had that one, and in some places they'd have, and now with the protests that's going on, they're going through. But we never, in our history, we never had to go that draconian. So I believe one of the things that make the government hesitant in doing that is like we don't know what to do in these cases. We don't have any clear measurements of what are we going to do. I mean, like the Middle East has gone through curfews along many times in life. So when they've done that there, it is ugly, but it might have spread. And because they couldn't afford giving people more chances because they don't have what we have in here, right?
Yeah.
So, but they went through
Yeah.
that. They went, and by the
Uh,
way, I don't think New Zealand. I heard about New Zealand. I don't think they even have to go through curfews there, which is
no.
which is very similar to us. They didn't have to go through that,
Yeah.
but they have. I would I would say that maybe they have more of people that like how the responsible citizens. More the citizens were more responsible. They were more unfollowing and following the orders, trying to keep that. And I would also have to. I mean, I don't like to talk politics, but I think their prime minister, Jacinda Ardern, has done a great job because what I saw there is that she was talking directly to people as well. She had her
Yeah.
own podcast, by the way, and she
Yeah.
was I heard that she was talking even to children, teaching them on her podcast how to cope within this. And because one of the things that people here were frustrated about is how to make their kids understand why do they
Yeah.
have to stay at
Mm.
home 24 hours for months. Why cannot they go see grandma and grandpa, right?
Or,
And
or Uncle Jim, or Uncle Jim. How come
or
Uncle Jim?
Uncle Jim for that, or Uncle Edge
Two
for that
weeks. I'm gonna
matter.
go see. I'm seeing my new nephew in 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
finally, 2 weeks.
yeah, but I mean, like this was fair, and she was. I listened to her
Yeah.
podcast, trying to talk to children, and trying to make fun and make them understand, and telling them what you can do. They have TV shows for that, and it's. I mean, like every country and even every province or every state has dealt with that, but I still believe, just to close that there was something wrong with the United States. I hope. I know that they'll get out of it, but I hope that they will get out of that with much less damage than a lot of people foresaw or forecasted. And with that, I believe that we've came to the last of our topics. Um, I would just like to tell people again to thank the Canadian citizens for being complacent and in compliance with the order, most of us. And I hope that people who were not the very few who were not complacent, that they've learned their lesson. And because we're gonna have another wave, and I hope that people who broke this, the norm and went out, just learned their lessons, and they were not gonna. This is not gonna happen. Most importantly, I would hope that by fall, we would have either a vaccine or at least some remedies that would help more to control this pandemic. And I hope that this episode was nice and useful to everyone. And I'll leave the last word for you, Jim.
Yeah, I just want to concur. I think that as Canadians, we try to do our best. Yes, we had some situations, but I'm trying to be optimistic that by the fall that we'll have something that we can have, or maybe early next year. So, with that, this is Jim.
And it's me, Hisham. And we thank you very much for being with us, for following us as well. We hope that this episode was light and useful.
All right, take care.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.